Welcome to today's Explainer. I want to start by talking directly to some of you watching right now. Maybe you haven't texted anyone in 3 months. Maybe your birthday passed with absolutely no plans. And honestly, you had zero complaints about it. When someone recently asked if you wanted to hang out, you said, "I'm busy." But here's the twist. You weren't lying. You were busy. You were busy protecting your peace. And strangely enough, you've literally never felt lighter. But you know what people are calling you now, right? They're calling you cold. They say you're the one who changed, the one who just cuts everybody off. Well, today, we're going to reframe that entire narrative. Because what you're experiencing, it's not the villain origin story society thinks it is.
Okay, let's dive into this. What if you didn't actually cut people off? What if you just stopped pretending you weren't already alone? First off, let's clear up a massive misconception right now. You didn't wake up one morning suddenly heartless. You woke up exhausted. You woke up after years of being the reliable one, the glue holding every friend group together, the person everyone called when they needed something. But when you needed something, absolute crickets.
This brings us to part 1, the villain myth, self-preservation.
Society has a real habit of judging the person who finally decides to walk away. They see this myth of you suddenly going cold, like you turned into a solid block of ice, dropping people for no apparent reason. But your reality looks like carrying the dead weight of years of unreciprocated effort. It looks like driving hours in the middle of the night for someone else's crisis. It looks like remembering every single birthday, milestone, and anniversary like it was literally your day job. Society sees the boundary. They don't see the years of bleeding out that made that boundary absolutely necessary.
So what actually causes this? That leads us to part 2, the relationship spreadsheet, cost-benefit analysis.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how your brain reacts when the effort is consistently one-sided. Subconsciously, you start running the numbers. You start collecting some pretty devastating data. Look at what you gave. You were always texting first, adjusting your schedule, canceling your own plans, and constantly sacrificing your own needs. And on the flip side, what you got? Crickets, tumbleweeds, unreturned calls, just empty boxes. Suddenly, the math simply stopped making sense. You have this heartbreaking realization that, wow, I'm the only one actually sacrificing to keep this connection alive.
And when that realization hits, your brain learns a very dark lesson. Connection equals eventual abandonment. See, your nervous system is this incredible, highly tuned survival machine. When you let someone in and show up with your whole heart, only to end up sitting alone with the pieces, your brain registers that pattern. It recognizes that needing people is dangerous. So what does it do? It decides to control the one single variable it actually can, the exit. Because honestly, abandonment hurts a whole lot less when you're the one initiating it.
But where does this reflex really come from? Part 3, the childhood blueprint, where it starts.
This deeply ingrained self-protective mechanism, it didn't just magically appear in adulthood after a bad breakup or a flaky friend. Actually, it almost always starts way back in childhood. Maybe your emotional needs were ignored. Maybe you learned early on that asking for help meant hearing, "Figure it out yourself," or just nothing at all. Your developing nervous system absorbed that harsh lesson. Then you move into adulthood, and those early experiences act as a blueprint. Every relationship that follows kind of just confirms it. Eventually the love runs out, and you'll be alone. So here in the present, your nervous system is completely wired for self-reliance. It's not because you're broken. It's because you're learning how to survive.
Moving on to section 4, boundaries versus walls, knowing the difference.
When you start acting on this learned self-reliance, you're going to face critics. People will say you're self-sabotaging, that you've built this massive brick wall to keep everyone out, but you didn't do that. You put up a shield. That's a boundary. And boundaries are designed to keep the wrong people out. This phase of your life isn't about rejecting connection forever. It's actually an empowering truth. You are simply refusing indiscriminate access to your energy. You didn't stop wanting people, you just stopped accepting anyone who felt familiar but unsafe.
To enforce these new boundaries, you developed a very specific psychological skill, hypervigilance. Now, this isn't paranoia. As you probably know firsthand, it is highly accurate pattern recognition and data collection. You essentially became a master detective of abandonment patterns. You can spot them a mile away, sometimes within just the first few conversations with someone new. And here is exactly what you're spotting: the exit signs, subtle shifts in tone, those convenient excuses that magically always seem to favor them. One-way effort. You've basically become completely fluent in the language of emotional unavailability. You perfectly translate every "I've been so busy" into its real meaning. So what do? Well, you let relationships quietly end. No grand drama. You just stop initiating to see if the other person even notices. And the tragic truth? They rarely do. And frankly, that tells you everything you need to know.
Which brings us to part 5, the piece of isolation, quiet is protected. You probably expected total devastation after cutting people off, but instead, the quiet actually became your absolute favorite sound. Physical isolation didn't create the loneliness, it just stopped pretending it wasn't already there. And this is incredibly validating to understand. The absolute loneliest you ever felt wasn't when you cut everyone off. It was before. It was sitting in a room full of your supposed friends, but feeling totally invisible. It was being in a relationship and still feeling fundamentally alone.
And this brilliantly illustrates a profound realization. Isolation isn't the opposite of connection. It's the absence of rejection. People don't understand why you would ever choose isolation. They don't see that for you, it's the one guaranteed space where you cannot be abandoned, simply because there's no one close enough to leave. You aren't closed off, you're protected.
So we really have to reevaluate the label society slaps on this behavior. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Cutting people off isn't the absence of love, it is the absolute presence of self-preservation. It's the deep, profound recognition that you literally cannot keep tilting an empty pitcher, trying to pour into people who treat you like a 24-hour convenience store. Open when they desperately need you, and completely forgotten the second they don't.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to take away. Will you use this quiet space to finally show up for yourself? Look, you are not the villain in anyone's story. You're just someone who stopped waiting for others to show up. Maybe one day you'll try connection again on terms that actually honor who you are. But right now, you are surviving. You are keeping that small inner flame alive, and you are taking the quiet space you need to finally become whole.